Hi, everyone. Thank you for joining us. I think we'll just give people a few more minutes to come in, but we're glad to have you here for the Youth and Frontline Voices press conference this morning. All right. Thank you all for joining us. If you're just joining, thank you for spending your morning with us for the Youth and Frontline Voices press conference. I'm going to pass it off to the MC, Marlo Baines.
Hello, everybody. Welcome to the press, adults, and youth on this beautiful morning. I want to acknowledge the Indigenous people of the Ute, Cheyenne, Arapaho, and Sioux. I want to remind us that we are on stolen land. My name is Marlo Baines. I'm the Youth Director for Earth Guardians, and today I'm turning 19. To be honest, I wish I didn't have to be here today carrying this message, but I'm here because I believe in a swift transition off of fossil fuels into a more equitable and regenerative world. 4 years ago, on the eve of my 15th birthday, I went to support the youth plaintiffs for the Martinez versus COGCC court case. Around that time, I would hear politicians say, "I wish we could do something, but our hands are tied. We have to wait until the judges rule in the favor of the youth plaintiffs. At this time, we can't do anything." Well, I'm here today to say, your hands have been untied, and you have the opportunity to stop all new fossil fuel infrastructure. You have the opportunity to make a swift transition away from fossil fuels by 2030. 4 years later, I wish I was up here talking about where Colorado has gone instead of where we could be. Why is our government pushing for more fossil fuel infrastructure? Why haven't they done more? Why do they wait? Throughout the last 4 years, I've seen youth do more than our government regulators. We went from being token 1 or 2 youth at meetings to hundreds of thousands of us pouring into the streets, collaborating intergenerationally with our adult allies, calling on politicians to listen to the scientists, listen to the Indigenous people of this land. The youth and adult allies have shown me what is possible when we come together for the land that we love. It's been 2 years since my first big climate strike that I helped organize on March 15th, 2019, when a group of college and high school students came together and mobilized over 500 people in Boulder, Colorado. We called on our politicians to protect our frontlines communities against the adverse effects of fracking then, to stop expanding fossil fuel infrastructure, to protect this beautiful land, our future, our home, then. I stand aghast, not at my peers, no, but at the politicians and the COGCC for continuing to give out permits to an industry that provides 25% of all global emissions, further perpetuating the climate crisis that we are living in now. We all can remember the feeling of smoke in our lungs for months as we watch the hillsides close to our homes burning. We are living in the climate crisis now. We need to take action now. We are either a part of the solution or the destruction of our home. Colorado, if you call yourself a climate champion state, then I ask you for no more empty promises. Stand into your integrity and do not greenwash the state. I call on the COGCC and the AQCC to take the steps that they need to take to protect our future. Begin to decrease fossil fuel infrastructure. Protect our air. Protect this land that we love so dearly. Not only protect my future, but let's protect the home that we have today. Thank you all so much. And to pass it off to a dear friend, a youth activist that I have watched grow into the person that she is today, Maya Bovino. She's a senior and a leader of the environmental club at Niwot High School. As an intern with 350 Colorado, she focuses with her environmental activism on establishing stringent oil and gas regulations at both local and state levels. I appreciate so much, Maya, and the message and the work that you've done. I'll pass it off to you.
Thank you, Marlo. That was beautiful. I just want to take a second to thank you also for being here on your birthday. I know every year it's definitely a special thing to be able to do what we love and also at the same time wish we didn't have to do every day of our lives. So with that, I will start my comment. So every day I ask myself, how is it that Colorado, a state that claims innovation and leadership at the forefront of the environmental crisis, is in the United States' top 10 list of largest producers of oil and natural gas? The answer is evident in the Polis administration's recently released Greenhouse Gas Reduction Roadmap. Colorado's Greenhouse Gas Reduction Roadmap currently includes plans to increase oil production by 86% and gas production by 41% by the year 2030. That accounts for an overall 61% increase in fossil fuel production in the coming years, all while the impacts of climate change become ever more immediate to Colorado citizens. I would like to take a second to emphasize that in order to decrease the greenhouse gas emissions, Colorado is currently planning on increasing fossil fuel production. The roadmap is substantively flawed in its action plan because it is built upon faulty assumptions. It is currently assumed that the state's oil and gas emissions account for 17% of Colorado's total greenhouse gas emissions. Though this figure initially sounds benign, it should raise suspicion from anyone who understands the impact of fossil fuels on the environment. In reaction, 350 Colorado compiled an in-depth data analysis and report on the role of the fossil fuel industry in Colorado's greenhouse gas emissions, which concluded that the industry's contribution more likely accounts for 70% of the state's greenhouse gas emissions. The sources of the state's drastic understatement are the grossly understated impact of methane on global warming and the exclusion of oil and gas exports in Colorado's overall emissions. It is unacceptable that Colorado plans to nominally decrease its greenhouse gas emissions while augmenting oil and gas production, the known leading source of global greenhouse gas emissions. Colorado must be held accountable. Thus, today, I, along with my fellow Frontline and young Coloradans, call on the state's two largest climate commissions, the Colorado Oil and Gas Conservation Commission and the Air Quality Control Commission, at their rare joint meeting to consider the critical time we are living in. We implore that they recognize the full extent of the fossil fuel industry's impact on greenhouse gas emissions, adopt figures that accurately reflect the impact of methane on global warming, and call out the flagrant flaws in the Polis administration's greenhouse gas reduction roadmap. The actions of our commissioners, our representatives, our policymakers today have the power to determine the future and the state of our world. Thank you. And with that, I will pass it off to Patricia Garcia Nelson, a 350 Colorado board member and a Frontline community member who will speak from personal experience to the fossil fuel industry's role in environmental racism.
Thank you, Maya. Like Maya said, I'm a board member of 315 Colorado. I'm also a mother of a student at Bella Romero Academy in Greeley, Colorado. We have had the unfortunate luck to have a well site less than 700 feet from the playground at our school. Currently, there have been over 200 reported incidents of elevated levels of emissions. And there's really no end in sight to our suffering simply because as of a couple weeks ago, we had an air monitor that was monitoring the air quality by our school. And since then, CDPHE has decided that we no longer need the air monitor unit at our school because they don't feel like the emissions are elevated at a level of concern, are elevated to a level that would cause concern. But that is really, really concerning to me as a parent whose son has to go to the school. My son doesn't have a choice. I can go to jail if I don't send my son to school. And so that is the reality of a lot of parents in my community. I have been trying to move him to another school in our district, but that's not going to be a possibility for other people. My sister's children also go to the school, but she has 5 children and she works in Denver. And so the ability for her to be able to find someone or find some way to move her children to another school is just nearly impossible. And when we take a look at the governor's roadmap, increasing production means increasing production in counties like mine that are already friendly to the oil and gas industry. That means increasing production in southern counties and counties in the western slope, communities that are already impacted deeply by this industry. So increasing production means increasing pollution, increasing the dangers to the health of my kids and everybody else's kids in this community. It's completely unacceptable because communities are like mine are once again being ignored, and we're being completely left behind, and it's completely unacceptable. Thank you everyone for having me. The next speaker is Esperanza Garcia. She's a 19-year-old Chicana student of architecture at CU Boulder. She's a member of Al Frente de la Lucha and Earth Guardians.
Thank you so much, Patricia. Hello everybody, good morning. Before I begin, I'd like to start and thank my elders for bringing me here. I want to apologize because I did not ask permission before I spoke to my elders and such. But I want to thank everybody for bringing us here and for the creator for having such a beautiful, fresh day for us. I'm Esperanza. I'm 19 years old. I go to CU Boulder. I'm studying architecture. My pronouns are they, them. My family comes from northern New Mexico, and I'm currently living here in occupied Cheyenne, Arapaho, and Lakota territories in Denver, Colorado. I kind of wanted to talk about, I want to talk about the petrochemical industry and how much it's affecting all of our lives, all of our health, all of our well-being. The petrochemical industry is notorious for creating plastics. And I know this is not quite Denver-centric, and it's not quite Colorado-centric, but it does affect us. Most petrochemical oil and gas is probably made in mostly made in like Southeast Asia and in places like China. And it seems far away from us, but it's really not. It affects us every single day. It affects the food that we eat, the seafoods that we eat. It affects the birds that carry the birds that carry the plastics across the ocean and bring it here to Colorado. This is not just a Colorado issue. This is a global issue, which is why we must stop the production of fossil fuels here in this moment. If we do not, we are going to be having this problem for another 400 years. If we do not, our grandchildren are already dying. My grandparents are already fearful for my safety, for myself, because I can't even raise the crops that we're usually raising. My grandparents are fearful because we don't have water because of the chemical industry, because of the fossil fuel industry. We must stop this today, here and now. Hear my words. Hear this plea. We must stop at all costs. We must transition to renewable energy as soon as possible. We are already in a detriment and we can't get out of it. This is our only way to escape and to hopefully be good relatives for our future kids and our future generations. Thank you so much for listening to me and for being here, being present, and for being part of this commission. I'd like to introduce the next speaker, whose name is Rose Ju, or Hu, I'm not quite sure. They are from the Fairview Net Zero Club, They are the president of the Communications of Fairview High School's 2-time EPA award-winning Net Zero Environmental Club. Here they are. Thank you.
Thank you for that, Esperanza. Hello, everyone. Like you said, my name's Rose Jo, and I'm a senior at Fairview High School here in the beautiful state of Colorado. I'm here today not because I love looking at depressing climate reports or speaking at press conferences and hearings, but because I know that my generation's future is in peril. Because the generations that came before us prioritize convenience over sustainability, and because corporations are more concerned with the momentary profit that they're able to make than they are with the resilience and long-term effects of their consequential actions. I'm here today to urge the people to recognize the extremities and the urgency surrounding the climate crisis, and to consider its impact on their future and their children's future. I'm also here to urge decision makers to do what is necessary, not just to aim for a healthy future, but to ensure it. I'm no expert on this issue, nor will I pretend to be, but even as a kid, I can look at Colorado's climate roadmap and see that it does not value our health and the health of our future above everything else. It's because of the roadmap's underestimations, flawed assumptions, and plan to increase the production of oil and gas that I am sitting here today at this press conference instead of my first period classroom. Even as a high school student, I can see that Colorado is far off track from its climate goals and from the urgent greenhouse gas reductions needed to secure a safe and healthy future. So far, there's been slow incremental progress, but the climate crisis and Colorado's climate commitments demand bold action. Colorado needs to immediately phase out of oil and gas. The times have changed. The standards of living have drastically increased, and with that, our energy consumption. However, we do have the means to sustainably keep up with these changes. We're currently living in a rapidly evolving society with incredible technology that was once thought impossible. So why haven't we adapted to take advantage of them? I understand that change is difficult and scary, but this is a necessary change that is filled with new opportunities for further advancement and hope. Many of us are not yet of age to vote, and we have only our voices as we fight for a livable future. This is why we call on the Commission to take action. We hold them accountable for a future. We truly do appreciate every step that the Commission have taken towards a cleaner future. However, we can and must do more. The commissions cannot afford to ignore this window of opportunity to fight for a future. Their decisions have the power to positively impact people's health, the earth on which we live, economies, communities. So I'm speaking here today, imploring the Commission to hear our voices and move forward on real climate action for us. Thank you. Next, I'd like to hand it over to Sochi from the Colorado Latino Forum.
Hi, everyone. Good morning. Sonia Gaitan, co-chair of the Colorado Latino Forum. And today I express deep concern as a parent, a resident of this beautiful state, and as a woman of color that supports the fight for justice in creating an environmentally clean and healthy living for our future generations. But first, I have to apologize for the generation coming after us. And I'll say some words in Spanish and go back into English. Tengo que disculparme con la generación que viene después de nosotros. Mi generación X no fue tan audaz y tan agresiva como deberíamos de haber sido para promover la regulación de la energía limpia. Y finalmente estamos al borde de un esfuerzo lo suficientemente robusto como para que nuestros jóvenes, la generación millennials y la generación Z, ahora puedan recibir apoyo para llevarnos audazmente hacia la justicia ambiental en la que todos merecemos vivir. And that is to say that my generation X was not bold and aggressive enough as we should have been to promote this regulation for clean energy. We are finally at the precipice of a robust enough effort that our younger millennial and Generation Z can now be supported in boldly moving us toward the environmental justice that we all deserve to live in. And when those commissioners of the Colorado oil and gas and air quality control entities don't take up stronger enforcement for the continuous monitoring of emissions at oil and gas sites, and we have no idea of the toxic emissions we are breathing in, I take that personally. And when commissioners continue to permit additional fracking thus exacerbating asthma and other respiratory issues to people living near fracking zones, I take that personally. When they think it's okay to protect policies that increase the use of oil and gas in our state, rather than decrease it and elevate a platform for environmental justice, I take it personally. And so should you. And when my Latino community that lives in and around refineries that release toxins into the air and then suffer from upper respiratory ailments and other health issues, it breaks me. It breaks me to know that we aren't doing enough to consistently advocate for stronger policy that calls for a decrease in oil and gas extraction and that calls for stronger enforcement that would promote the abatement of greenhouse gas emissions and pollutions. We have a younger generation of people here with us today and watching and they're going into the workforce now, and they're learning about a new way of working and living in a more environmentally friendly and clean air world. They've been educating themselves and prioritizing clean energy jobs. These clean economy jobs are the future. And we can reform energy policy into policy that will equitably distribute energy resources to all Colorado communities. An equitable energy system that will improve efficiencies in our homes and our businesses, electrify and modernize the transportation grid, assist in prioritizing environmental justice throughout all of our communities, reducing carbon pollution and footprint, reduce our dependency on oil and gas jobs. These clean economy jobs can be just as well paid as any, and it will take the next generation's bold and progressive action to empower our marginalized communities. And so our Latino and our Indigenous peoples, we disproportionately face dangerous environmental hazards. And so to the youth on this Zoom and those watching, we support you. And we ask you to continue in the efforts of the older generation to push back against this call for an increase in oil and gas extraction and dependency. Educate those around you in your community on how we continue to transition toward a more renewable energies and distribution of energy resources more equitably. I personally want a planet for my grandchildren with good, clean air to breathe and natural resources that they can use for life well lived. And I hope you do too. Sí se puede. Yes, we can. Thank you. And so now I'll pass the mic on to my co-chair of the Colorado Latino Forum and also an organizer with GreenLatinos, a strong environmental justice warrior, Ian Tafoya.
Thank you, everyone, and thank you, Sochi, and everyone else. I'm always so inspired. Patricia, I know you've shown such strength in the face of environmental racism time and time again. It was just a year ago before COVID that we stood on the steps in the opening of the Capitol, demanding justice for the children of Bolo Romero. We still are here demanding justice from these commissioners. It's ironic in some ways that we're all here today. It is Latino Advocacy Week across this nation. In our own capital, in the national capital, we are coming together to voice our opinion and speak with one united voice that we will not return back to normal, the normal of environmental racism, the normal that poisons our children, the normal that leaves millions of gallons of water toxic across this country, a normal that damages prenatal health in the elderly with our air pollution. Now, I can't help but look at these commissioners and look at the population of Colorado, where there are more than 1.5 million Latino and Indigenous people. And we know that this is undercounted purposefully. But when I look at the Colorado Oil and Gas Commissioners and the Air Quality Control Commissioners, what do I see? One woman of color, one Latino, out of more than a dozen individuals. Look at the PUC2. Now we're talking about 20 individuals who hold the power of the future generations in their hands, yet do not reflect the cultura that we share. You don't have to be from the same culture to respect other cultures. You don't have to be from the same culture to value the niños of another culture. We're here asking you to look inside yourself, to look at the results from CDPHE and the studies by scientists across this country, across this globe, that shows us expansion of fossil fuels is not the way. That shows us that the long-term exposure to fossil fuels along the way has damaged my lungs, has damaged the Niños' lungs on this call. We must protect the water. We must center the youth. We must protect the pregnant women in our community. I'm here speaking to you, men. Do you see this call is full of women speaking up for the future? Where are you? Indigenous elder women have told me, where are the men? And I am here calling on you today. All of you men on this commission, wake up. Wake up and protect the water. Wake up and protect the children. Wake up and protect the women. Wake up and protect the elders. It is your responsibility. It is my responsibility. They carry so much in our society in this patriarchy. It's bullshit. And I'm here asking for a better future, a better way where men join with women and transgender people to a better future. A future that protects the water, that provides health equity for all. This is la lucha para liberación ambiental. This is about environmental liberation. And you will see that we are all ready to fight. We're ready to show up in every place that you're not expecting us. We're ready to protest on the line and go to jail. This is the fight of our lives. This is the fight for our children. And I say one last time, we're going to keep showing up every chance we can and everywhere we can. We need to commit to climate justice, which means following the science and centering the improving of lives of those who have been most harmed by the dependency on fossil fuels. We ask all of you to join us in making common sense ethical and economic decisions, like reducing extraction, not continuing, knowing that greenhouse gas problem is cumulative and that these gases are causing harm in our communities. I want you all to have a vision with us. Even those on the other side, you must see it coming. You must feel it in your bones. We all do. I feel honored to be here with the youth today. And I'm very, very pleased to introduce the next speaker, Rocky Kataria, who is a 16-year-old youth activist born and raised here in Colorado, just like me. She's a crew leader of Earth Guardians Boulder and is on the Youth Sustainability Board. You know, my birthday was Earth Day, and I've been involved in this fight a long time, and I have such hope in seeing so many bright spirits here today.
Thank you, Ian. That was super powerful. So I should be in class right now, but instead I'm here using my voice to urge the Air Quality Control Commission and the Colorado Oil and Gas Conservation Commission to decrease oil and gas production in Colorado rather than increasing it. I've lived in Colorado my whole life, and it truly breaks my heart that our government does not have the same concern for the land as its people do. By expanding oil and gas production, you're directly impacting my future and the future of the youth, leaving us a climate catastrophe to clean up on our own. We're getting closer and closer to the climate tipping point, and it's time for you to hear our concerns. Despite Colorado's repeated claims of climate leadership, it's the 7th largest producer of oil and gas and the 5th largest producer of oil. Over the next decade, the state's roadmap anticipates an 86% increase in oil production and a 41% increase in gas production. You cannot endorse an expansion of oil and gas production and claim to be a climate leader. It just doesn't make sense. The current climate roadmap is flawed. It doesn't realistically reduce emissions when it calls for an expansion of oil and gas production. The roadmap is a critical threat to youth who will grow up with horrible air quality and polluted lands. Colorado's our beautiful home. We all love looking outside to see snowy peaks and clear skies. But with increased emissions due to oil and gas expansion, we may no longer have these gorgeous views. This summer, with the raging wildfires, the fear of losing my home and state became realistic. With this, I saw the damaging effects of the climate crisis with my own eyes. I could feel the need to take immediate action. The ice caps of the Rockies are melting. Animals are losing their homes due to fracking. And we've received 60-degree weather and 2 feet of snow in 1 week. How is this normal? If these effects aren't enough to see that we need to change our oil production habits right now, I don't know what is. According to a UN report on the global production gap, we must reduce our oil and gas production by 6% a year so that we can meet the goal of under 2 degrees Celsius by 2030. I am calling on the COGCC, the AQCC, and the Colorado government to reduce its oil and gas production by 6% instead of ramping it up. If you want to be a climate champion state, then you have to do your part instead of greenwashing the public. I'm doing my part as a 16-year-old, but you are all adults and you're not doing your part. We need your support and immediate action to make it happen. Will you do your part in making my future green and safe for me to live in? Thank you.
Thank you all to the amazing youth and adult allies in speaking today. Thank you for speaking the truth, and thank you for standing in solidarity together. I'd like to now open the floor up to any questions that the press may have, and then if none, we will open it up for questions from the participants. But first, is there any questions from the press? Do we have any questions from the participants or the people watching this press conference today? Feel free to put a hand up or put a star in the chat or unmute yourself. Okay. If we have no other questions, there we go. Mary asked, what can we do to get the PUC, AQCC, and COGCC to reliably reduce methane and CO2 by 2025? Does anybody want to answer the questions from the participants? Or sorry, from the speakers today?
I would say that in response to that, there are endless opportunities to speak at AQCC and COGCC hearings. And every week, I believe the AQCC holds public hearings where they have signups. And of course, I encourage you to get involved with your local advocacy groups as well. The ones that are represented today include Earth Guardians, if you're a youth, or 350 Colorado, Boulder, and GreenLatinos and the Colorado Latino Forum. So there are endless opportunities to really get involved with advocacy and to call on the COGCC, AQCC, and our representatives to phase out of oil and gas in the coming decade.
Yeah, I would like to add to Esperanza, I'll get to you next. I would also say we need to call on the COGCC to stop permitting new fossil fuel expansion or infrastructure. That's something that they could have started a year ago. We continue to see that they continue to give out these permits, the detriment of, the fracking industry has such a detriment on Colorado's air, the air quality for all of our citizens, especially our frontlines communities. And as citizens, we can continue to push our politicians to do more. We saw that in the past 4 years, youth and adults coming together, we've pushed them to now start talking about the climate crisis as if it's a crisis, but we now need them to take actually the action that they say that they want to take. So continuing to push them to do so is going to be really, really important. I know it can feel frustrating, but so does, as youth, we feel that frustration too, but we continue to show up. And so we need our adult allies to do the same. Esperanza.
Thank you. I wanted to kind of reply to that question of how we can, from Mary, I believe, what can we do, right? By 2025, reduce methane, CO2. I think that another piece of this, like if we really are looking at the PUC and the AQCC and the COGCC, is to show up on the streets. One, I mean, there's so many actions you could do. You could go to their homes. You can take it to their places of business, to their places to get coffee. You can take it to the streets. You can take it to anywhere and like really like bring that message out more. And also, one thing that I wanted to say is that if we stop oil production here in Colorado, that doesn't just end this climate crisis. We need to do it globally. And we need to stop importing plastics here in Colorado from other places, importing other oil from other places, because then we're just outsourcing our oil production elsewhere. We've seen this with Tesla. We've seen this with many countries and nations before, where they stop producing oil, they start producing some product, and they just outsource it elsewhere. And then they bring that same feeling that we're all feeling here, the same struggle, the same harm, the same death that we see to other places. We must think globally. We must think of all of our different relatives around here, and not just us. This isn't just Colorado. This is a global issue. This is in a way its own pandemic for non-humans and humans alike. So we must think about, it's not just us. It's not just outsourcing our oil from elsewhere. We're in contingent with each other. And thank you guys so much. And I saw that Micah had dropped some resources below saying you can sign up on the AQCC page to listen in to this morning's joint meeting. And also, one thing I was going to say before I end is that just like last year or a couple years ago, like as a young person, I've been raised in like these kind of like activism spaces, you know, and after a while I started to lose hope, because I was like, I don't see this happening. Like, I don't see any change happening. Where do I see this in the news? Like, why are we still fighting for liberation from Palestine to Kashmir? Why are we doing this, you know? But then kind of like after like Black Lives Matter really made a huge impact on this for humans here on this globe, like I realized that like the scholars follow activists, and scientists follow activists who are there on the front line, who know what's happening, who raise their voice even if they're unheard, you know. And this relates to everything, y'all. Like, we really need to expand our minds. Like, this relates to human trafficking in so many ways. Like, our oil production has harmed so many indigenous, Black and brown communities here in Colorado, because when we're laying pipe down on this earth, unwanted pipes, we're also laying it down in our women and those who are most vulnerable, because we're attracting those kind of people who want to do that kind of harm. So yeah, thank you. That's all. See you guys.
Thank you so much, everybody. Just to echo what Esperanza said and so many others, we need to take action locally, but think globally. Again, big thank you to everyone who spoke today for your message and continuing to move forward, even when we do feel hopeless. Together, we are bringing the hope. To echo what Mike has been putting in the chat, there will be a recording of this on YouTube and Facebook. And then please sign up on the AQCC's page to listen to this morning's joint AQCC and COGCC meeting. Thank you so much, everybody. Have a lovely morning, and thank you so much for attending.